Good morning, LinkedIn. Happy Tuesday, June 25th. This is Let's Build Daily. I'm your host, Chris Carolan, joined with another special guest. Nakul is here to talk about dashboards and reports. How you doing, man?
Hey, good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well,
Yeah,
thanks.
thanks for being here. Before we dive in, for those that might not know you, who are you?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Nakul Kadaba. I'm actually the senior director of our consulting department at Mole Street. We are an elite HubSpot solutions partner in the ecosystem. And just to quickly summarize my background, I've got experience at HubSpot, which I just finished my time there a little while ago. After about nearly 7 years, and then before that, I was a functional data analyst. So doing a lot of things like what we're going to talk about today, which is reporting and data management.
Awesome. Before we do that, I'm interested, what were you doing for the 7 years at HubSpot?
Yeah, I worked in our customer success organization over there. So I actually came on as a CSM, really aging myself like quite a while ago now at this point. Excuse me. And then I hopped on to our professional services team to lead consulting engagements and go a little more in depth with our clients on not just go-to-market strategy and reporting, but also process mapping, business process optimization, digital transformation. Um, and I capped it off by managing a couple of teams in professional services and customer success as well.
Awesome. I think I want to have you on for a conversation just about that stuff.
Oh, sure.
uh,
Anytime.
given given some weaknesses in the ecosystem I talk about on occasion, but we'll leave that for that other time.
Sounds great.
And we'll dive in today with I'll start sharing my screen here as we
Yeah.
talk about our goal of, going to. I like to think about we're trying to tell a story with the data, at some point. If you're not trying to do that, if you're not trying to use data to make decisions, I'm sorry to tell you, you probably should not be investing in a tool like HubSpot. That is one of the primary, superpowers. You should be counting on it to do. And if you're having to export data from HubSpot so that you can create other reports or other insights in Excel sheets, or something's not right. And oftentimes it starts right here. So I'm gonna, and this is where, like, yeah, we could show dashboards and templates and all this stuff, but if we're not understanding this, it's a lot harder to get there. So what are we looking at here?
What are we looking at? We're looking at a entity relationship diagram. Basically, this is the skeleton, quite literally, of how HubSpot's default objects and data groups are linked together and with what. So everything from a contact, a company, a deal, and a ticket, which a lot of people know in HubSpot, you get even at the free level, all the way down to engagements, line items, timeline events, analytics events, timeline events, how they all link to what objects. Is it a one-to-one linkage? Is it a one-to-many? Is it a many-to-one? Is it a many-to-many? That actually helps you understand how your reporting will be structured or can be structured within HubSpot or within a tool like HubSpot, because many other tools have things like this. And there's a version of this that's actually in the tool that anyone can view, called the data model. So that you don't have to take this, Canva diagram, although very, very helpful, with you everywhere. You can view it at any time.
Right. And we're about to show that. But
Yeah.
when you're working with people, specifically when it comes to
Yeah.
reporting,
Yep.
what are some signs that they don't understand the data model?
Yep. I think the first thing comes down to, and I actually talked about this with George B. Thomas on a podcast a little while ago as well. Biggest thing is just understanding the default properties within what you get at HubSpot. When you start with a HubSpot, subscription, and we talk about this in Mull Street too, you're already getting a lot of great default properties that will record a lot of pretty good information for you, sometimes automatically too. If that translates to people creating these properties duplicatively to think that they have to do that to measure, for example, cumulative value on a deal, original source of a contact or a company, the products purchased. I know, Chris, you love that stuff, right? The products purchased on a particular deal. If you're creating an extra property of that, knowing that it's already getting collected, that's a sign that we may want to actually sit down with you as a prospect or a client, right? Especially from our perspective now, and say, hey, I think you're doing a lot of extra work, right? But more importantly, let's shift that and let's concentrate more on, as you were saying at the beginning, taking action based on the reporting that we're going to build, right? To improve your business processes. I mean, that's the win. That's the real victory, more than anything else. So,
yeah. And nothing tells you that you don't have your data stuff together, like trying to build reports and dashboards.
yeah.
And as a first example, you and I had talked about maybe prepping some stuff for this show. And this is where no matter how much, you created some new stuff here. There's some templates in the system.
Yeah.
If we click on create dashboard, oh, look at this. Like we got all these options.
Yep.
Like, if we just select one of these, right? And this is where it's easy to get in and start doing stuff, right? And start creating stuff. But when I click next here and, I just create as an example and go to dashboard, I'm actually surprised to see some data here. But that's the thing. Like if there's no data, there's no reports, right? So
and you hit on another very good point, Chris, to your first question, right? Sometimes if data is not flowing in, I mean, that's the other issue, right? Then it's more of a not just process, but then I'd say architecture question of like, well, we have to link all these systems together in some way, right? So that we do have some kind of a linkage and relationship that we could talk through. And we would, want to walk through that, because that goes so much further than just saying, great, we can now pull some reports to show the relationship between your HubSpot CRM and your ERP system, for example, right? It says, this is where your process is succeeding, and this is where it's failing. And most importantly, here's the points of where it's failing so you can take some action to address it. And that's the victory, being able to actually address it, because now you have data-driven insights at that point to show it.
Right. And that's like, I always impress on people, like the question to ask when somebody asks you for a new report or a new dashboard. Why?
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to accomplish, with the data that you want to see? And nothing is worse than sitting in the same meeting week after week, looking at data and then not doing anything about it, right? Are you going to take action? What if it tells us this, what does the action look like? If it looks bad, if it looks bad and we're not taking any action, that has a huge detrimental impact sometimes, because we're just reminded of how bad it is while not doing anything about it.
That's right.
And So this is the like kind of the next level after like we show this, and then this is in platform, and we're making some progress here on being able to, visualize the data structure. That this team is doing great things right now.
Yep.
We've got a nice, data setup checklist now, but this is where, at least like from a principal perspective, like understanding the need for documentation like
Yep.
this. And I told this team, I was like, well, this is a great checklist to do a lot of stuff, but
Mhm.
can you please make a step 0 that says document your data model
Yeah.
first, right?
Yeah.
And because this is where, I mean, like you said, that was the default one we're looking at. Now we've got CRM objects, we've got sales objects, we've got custom objects,
Yep.
you've got all of our activities. And half the battle here is just understanding that there is a place for the data, right? Do we have
There's
that place or do we not? If we don't, you know, are we looking in the right place or do we actually need to create new? So how do you walk people through that part of the
yeah.
conversation?
The first thing is actually um, from a from an organizational perspective, just understanding what their business goal is, and we do that. I've done that pretty much throughout my consulting engagements, and we really highlight it at Mole Street. It's one of the, I'd say, big value adds is where we say, take all the tech out of the equation. What do you want to do, right? Right. What do you want to achieve? Do you have a revenue target? Is it a customer acquisition goal? Is it a total addressable market percentage that you got to hit? Just knowing that gives you immediately something, and hopefully a very easy base report to show progress on, because then you can dive into metrics by the team or departments or geographies or however the organization's designed to say, oh, sales cares about this, marketing cares about this, service cares about this, operations cares about this, so on and so forth. It's like, great. They all add up as a result to that big business goal. And now you've got clarity at the very least from everyone at the top all the way down to the bottom as well. And we try to do that. And we do that pretty consistently, because then when we get to the latter half of being able to show the reporting, the emphasis is more on slight feedback about why we think progress is going the way it is and what we will do to improve or maintain it, right, as a result. So the business goal and all that is very important. Then the next thing I would say is really understanding the initiatives to make progress on those metrics and that big business goal is necessary. So, a sales team really needs to improve their sales activities and adoption in the tool. Okay, well, that sounds like you need a sales enablement plan, right? And a rollout, right, of those tools that will help sales reps actually perform and use it better. As an example, great. And we know what's going to be used to make progress on that. We also know the properties default and custom, right, by that stage, because we'll ask those questions. So this is what we need to record, right? Apart from what's already being recorded, because remember, HubSpot comes with a lot of very built-in default properties, some of which are automatically recorded. So it's like, great. Some of it we won't even need to create, or really maintain, because it's just going to be done. And then it's some nuanced custom properties based on the organization itself. Of course, we want to do that. Then you can get to creating the dashboards, understanding, or I would say your step is very important, writing down your data model, right? Or at least viewing it in like this, so that you understand, how everything's going to be linked together, and then reporting on it. When you get to reporting at the last step, after you've done all that work and you're making progress on your initiatives to fill in your data, then it becomes much more impactful. This stuff that makes a lot more sense, right? As a result.
Yes. And it needs to make sense.
Yeah, and it needs to be
at some point, like surprise. But
that's right.
I say it like that because so often, like you talked about so many things from being able to see a dashboard to then impacting the behavior of a sales team,
Yeah.
right? If any part of that is not making sense to the person that you're trying to influence, like it breaks the whole process. And, you know, uh, one of the things I always like, as soon as I understood, like we're trying to tell a story with the dashboard, I would always, with my teams, that's where I would start. It's like, okay, you created this dashboard.
Mhm.
What is somebody outside of our team right now, outside of the marketing team? They
Mm.
look at this dashboard. What story are they reading and what are they understanding? And so that's like a piece of it. But then coming to the understanding that like 95% of the story could be like crystal clear and perfect. If there is a piece that doesn't make sense
Mhm.
or has bad data in it,
Yep.
and you're talking to an external, like a stakeholder from another team,
Mhm.
especially when they're an engineer or a scientific mind or they understand data on some level,
Yeah.
it ruins the credibility of the entire dashboard. And if it's their first time viewing HubSpot as a platform as well, because what you're
Yeah.
showing them, like it just has this psychological impact that you have to be so wary of, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And that may require you as the person who's creating that dashboard to say, hey, we are walking in knowing that this integration is a little faulty. We are walking in knowing that we have a problem with these objects, so that the report ends up amplifying the more central message of, we know that a big problem and the actions that we have to take away with this are, we need to fix the relationship with this bad data and our good data right within HubSpot, and then actually, as we've talked about, and then actually do it, right, and then follow through and actually do it, so that we can kind of see that incremental progress over time through that report.
So when we like, let's talk about end state real quick, just to kind of
Yeah.
paint the picture, and then uh, we're gonna go into that surprise dashboard to see what we can take away.
Sure.
Um, what benefits or what have you seen as like, the thing that makes people light up the most when you've got like a great looking dashboard, the
Mhm.
story is clear, um, there's no questions about clean data, and it's just,
Mhm.
hey, we trust this dashboard we're looking at and we understand the story it's telling us. What happens inside of an organization when you actually get there?
Your meetings end up using that dashboard as the evidence for their points. And the best example I've seen is, a consulting engagement a little while ago that was on, where the sales management team literally pulled it up, had it on the big screen, right, with me on the other side on the Zoom screen, but they were referencing it the entire time, right, to talk about, this is how we're going to expand. This is why we're expanding very well. This is where we need to put a little more effort, right? Or put a little more focus. And that was a very um, distinct management meeting, because they said, we do this now every single week because this consulting engagement really got us to think about, oh, I need to make my meetings more efficient. I need to make my action points more efficient. I need to make my evidence more pinpointed. The reporting dashboard, after it was constructed, was able to do that. And that wasn't a one time, a one try, right? It took a few times to really tweak it. But once we got there, we're good to go, right? And then the best part was, everybody's walking out of that meeting and they're saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. You're going to do this. She's going to do this, or he's going to do this. So that when they meet next week, they know that these things are being accomplished. They know who's being held accountable for it, so they can start noting progress. That's the best end state that you want to get to. You're really using it to really inform your team strategy, your department strategy, your organization strategy. Because it means it's more than you just trust the data. I'm trusting it so much that I know that this is telling me if I'm going to hit my revenue target or not, if I'm going to hit the MQL target that I have to hit as a marketing organization. Am I going to attain my NPS rating, right, as a service team? That's the real, I'd say, takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as you're talking about it, I'm just thinking about it's like the other end of the common language foundation that you need. Like the first part is diagrams like this,
Yep.
understanding how the system is built. And when you're working with when you're working with people who want to do what's best for the business, it doesn't really matter their intelligent level or how many hours they work. I guarantee you they're willing to sit down for 15, 30 minutes to understand some of these nuances that we say, oh, they don't have time for this, or we need to keep it simple, or, the fact is we're being asked sometimes by them to create this very complex system to create this very simple report. Right. And when they don't understand the complexities, so I usually challenge everybody, see if you can take the time, because not understanding this, or on the other side, not understanding how the dashboard is put together, which we're going to see in a second, there's some very easy variables to, click on that just change the whole story dramatically. Especially when you're putting this stuff in the hands of other people in the organization.
And it doesn't, and I don't mean to cut you off, Chris, but that also not just extends to HubSpot itself, but also the integrations that you may have as an organization. We understand. I know you understand. I certainly understand. We do at Molestreet that this is not your only system that you use every day, right? But it's important to, again, connect those systems together, because if there's common data points that are flowing through that you can then show on a dashboard in HubSpot in case the management team uses it, or the other way, right? Now you've got some actual cooperation between your systems and then your teams. It's indicative there of being able to actually say, hey, let's actually figure this out. Otherwise, you have a disjointed team or a disjointed organization. That's no good to anybody, really.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because we can often struggle with, or, the buyers or customers are struggling with, how do these systems overlap? Which system is doing what? Do I really need the data everywhere? And I think one of the keys is if you can wrap your mind around the entire system and the tools in it, like HubSpot and an ERP, let's say, they work together to create one single source of truth place. But the customer team might be using HubSpot to see it. The operations teams might be using the ERP to see it, right? And that's where we're not trying to replace either system. We're understanding that HubSpot is a place where that's where our customer teams are empowered to help customers. Meanwhile, the ERP is the place that manages product life cycles and the dollars and cents of it all, right? And that at that point, it's okay to have some dollars and cents data over in HubSpot so we can communicate that. It doesn't mean we have to create the data in HubSpot. Vice versa. We need some of that customer information in the ERP so we can link things together properly. But it doesn't mean we're going to ask the ERP to send out automated email campaigns and, customer success, like scoring and all this stuff that they're not built to do. So kind of seeing this as one system, and ensuring that the right system has a place for the data, at least,
Yep.
to support the things that you're asking the system to do for you, whether it be
Mhm.
reports or whether it be your customer facing team, working out of it.
And those are all those things you just mentioned, Chris. Those are initiatives, right? In that big business goal metrics initiative. Hey, I need to link my ERP to my HubSpot instance. Hey, I want to do some email marketing afterwards. I want to be able to have automated follow-ups from my sales and CS teams, to customers once they purchase. All of those are initiatives, right? That we can, we are skilled and we can, and we want to concentrate on those because we know that that's going to follow up to the really nice stuff, which is you got a dashboard that's telling you at least accurate data that you are pretty confident in. Okay, let's take some action.
Yeah. And once you have that set and those great meetings that you talk about,
Yep.
it just removes this gray area that we waste so much time in these meetings. And it's why, like, our minds need to be like, the less uncertainty, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And that gray area and this is why some people, you find those challenges within an organization. They kind of like living in that gray area. Sometimes they like their spreadsheets that they can manage to share and communicate what they want to be communicated. And as soon as you remove that, it just takes the conversation to a different level. You just naturally become more efficient and effective without even like trying, right? Because you're just having a different conversation, because this is the source of truth. We don't need to talk about why, when, or how it's generated. It's just, this is what is. And then you move to, okay, this is telling us this.
Yep.
What are we going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Right.
Is it might not match our goal, but that's okay, as long as we understand, one, like, why it's not, and two, we might change the goal instead, right? It doesn't mean we're going to use this to create a bunch of more, change management, but maybe our goal wasn't realistic, and maybe that's what the data is trying to tell us.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, just the removal of those gray areas. It's a lot of fun, like, when you can do that as an admin.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden, every piece of the organization gets, a little more efficient, a little more effective. So quick, like, let's say 1 minute drill. Since I was surprised by this, we're gonna just come over to this dashboard and say, what are your takeaways? Like, we're seeing stuff we weren't expecting to see
good
stuff.
question, Chris. Well, first thing, I think we got to generate some more sessions. I think you got to write some blog posts, Chris. You got to write some content or something, because you're getting only a few. And it's too early to say if there's a good division, if, what's the impact on percent of new sessions. It's too little of a sample size, I think, at least in the last 30 days. If we go further down, the other thing I'd also say is, even though it's a small sample size, it looks like so far what this tells me is people are spending time on your website. 18 minutes for any website is pretty good, actually, by today's standards. Not a lot of diversification in terms of the original source. So again, it just really doubles down on that. We got to create some content, but we got to create content in different avenues. So for those who don't know, like, one of those default properties in HubSpot, Chris, I know you know this, for companies and contacts is original source. So direct traffic, organic search, social, paid search, paid social, other campaigns. If you do a direct mail campaign, right? All that stuff can actually link and automatically get tied to someone who comes onto your website for the first time. Here, it's telling me I'm not really seeing much, right? And we can actually propel that through some action, at least.
Yep. Well done on the fly.
Yeah, thanks.
I think the like a couple of things you mentioned, like the in the last 30 days,
Yep.
right? That
Yep.
is a very common way to tell a very misleading story,
It can be. Yeah.
is by having maybe an all-time dashboard, or
Mm,
vice versa, where you think it's all time and then it shows you last 30 days
that's it.
occasionally,
Yeah.
right? Um, Understanding that, like, when I show this is all test pages, right?
Right.
And it's me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
many times you haven't filtered out your internal team's activities,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how is that impacting the data? It doesn't mean, like, sometimes you want to see activity for your team, from your team, especially
Yep.
when you're trying to get engagement from like, the sales team using sales resources.
Sure.
um, but know that I created, just a couple pages here, and it's already, I didn't do anything else to start collecting this data, or like, all I did today was just create that dashboard.
Mm,
This is where, like, as soon as you add the token, to the website, or you start creating sites, like, it can be easy to just come over here and be like, oh yes, I've got a story to tell now, if you don't take time to understand how it's telling you that story.
right.
Because literally, and I only know this because I just learned the hard way, where
Sure.
it's like, oh, this 18 minutes is great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's from this person on our team.
Right.
And then, like, because this is where, like, you start to think you're getting the job done, and your SME or your leader that you're talking to, it's like, oh man, that looks really great. And
Yeah.
then you click on it and you're like, oh shit. Like,
Face palm.
just like, yeah. Uh and that's where, like, it just goes from hero to zero, like, real quick. So this has been an awesome conversation. I'd love to have you back on, sometime. Uh, until then, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, two ways. One is definitely through LinkedIn. Would love to connect with anybody there, especially what issues they're having with data visualization, especially in HubSpot. And then come check out our website, www.molstreet.com. Chris, I'm sure we can pull that up in the comments section just for people to utilize and get in touch with us. So,
Yep, I will add that link, and the links to some other articles you've shared with me in the comments. Um, it's been great, man. This is like a
thanks for
one of
having me.
those, like, deep dives that we could spend like a week on.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but this is the foundation that I think was really great today, and appreciate you coming by. Uh, and for anybody watching, look at your dashboards, look at your reports, understand your data model, find the opportunity, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.